Sessions A Election Primary Update, Ms. Vera.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, thank you for inviting me to this session. So this is a first for me. So thank you, Dr. Casey. Good afternoon, members of the board. We just completed November's election, and we've turned right around and prepared for early voting, which is already in progress, started on Friday for the March presidential primary. I'll speak more about the March election in a moment. I prepared 8 slides for you, with each slide providing an answer to questions we often receive from the public. So first question being, how many voted in the November 2023 election? So you'll see the breakout there of 120,536. So that's 45% voter turnout for this election. And in-person early voting, we had 32,000 show up. By mail, 13,000. So the by mail and early voting voter turnout is steadily increasing. So we're seeing less and less people on election day, but election day is still high voter turnout. We had 72,000. And then provisional votes cast for this past November were 946. And then we also received ballots in our office, and we're still processing ballots after election day. So we have post-processing, so we have counted 736 ballots received during that post-election. The next question is, do you have enough election workers, right? So we always hear, do you have enough? Well, we have 3 major elections this year. That means 135 days, 4.5 months that we are in voting mode. That's a lot of time. So our current active officer is 1,158. We had 669 of those serve in this past election. We had 69 no-show for whatever reason. They just didn't show up on election day, so we have a 58% participation rate. Our projected need for this March election is 700. For the June, we have 850, and for November, we have 1,100. It may seem a bit high as far as our projected need. Again, more and more people are voting early or by mail. So election day staff, we can sort of bring those numbers down. However, we just never know the voter turnout. So we have to be ready. And of course, we try to account for those no-shows on election day. If you have interested people wondering how they can be involved, please send them to our website. There's an interest form there, and we can get them started with the paperwork and assigning them to a precinct. We need people to be involved and engaged in our voting process. So who's on the ballot for this March election? So we're having a dual primary, so Democratic presidential and a Republican presidential primary. As you may know, several candidates have announced the suspension of their campaign. So why are the names still listed on the ballot? Will we be notifying voters that some of these people have announced their suspension? So the state has not received formal notice of withdrawal from any one of these candidates listed. So this prevents us from posting any notices stating that any candidate has withdrawn from the race. So we cannot at this time notify voters as we would essentially think that we could do. So the names will be listed. They are our sample ballots are on the website. Because of this, that we cannot notify voters, we cannot tell them that, well, this person has suspended their campaign, and if you vote on day 40, they may not be, an active candidate by March 5th. Because of this, we highly encourage voters to do their research before casting their ballot. Once the ballot has been cast, that's it. There is no going back. Dorothy Jekyll and I met with Communications and Media to make sure that we're putting out messaging on social media, just saying that please be informed before you show up to the polls. Do your research, sort of know before you go. We definitely want voters to be informed. We want them to be confident in the vote that they cast and not have voters' remorse when they get home and see the news. So another question is, does Virginia register by party? No, Virginia holds open party primary elections. However, we want voters to know that when they show up to cast their ballot, the check-in officer will be asking the question, in which primary do you wish to vote? And that is not at all to be invasive or nosy about their affiliation. We're not asking, what is your affiliation? We need to know what ballot to assign to provide to the voters. So we just want voters to know that they should expect to be asked that question and not get offended. Some people do get offended, and that's not our intent. We just need to know which ballot to provide the voter. So when can I vote? Beginning 45 days before every election, registered voters may vote early in person at the registrar's office, or they can wait 1 week before Election Day when our satellite locations open at 5 different libraries, or they can wait to vote on Election Day. If the voter chooses to wait till Election Day, they must vote at their assigned precinct. Now, the 1 week voting time frame for the satellite locations is a change to previous elections when satellite voting was open 2 weeks. The board voted to decrease the 2 weeks to 1 week. Statistics show that most voters voting early show up during that final week. We expect this to be the case for this election especially. And just in case you're interested, we did start early voting on Friday, so we've had 191 ballots cast early. What are the times and locations for early voting? So we are currently open at the registrar's office Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5 for anybody to come in person and cast their ballot. We also have a drop box available inside the registrar's office available for those people who requested an absentee ballot and they do not want to put it in the mail. They can come in, they can drop it off in our drop box. The satellite locations will open starting February 24, that's a Saturday, through March 2nd. So basically Saturday to Saturday, that Monday to Friday, they will be open 10 to 6, and then Saturday 8:30 to 5. In past, we've been open 10 to 7 at the library, so this also is a little bit of a change, but again, we looked at the data, and data just shows that very few people came between that 6 and 7 hour period, so we just did shorten it 1 hour. And we are open at all the libraries listed: Clover Hill Library, Meadowdale, Ettrick, Matoaka, North Courthouse, and La Prade Library. How can I find my assigned polling location if I want to vote Election Day? So we provide this QR code, and it's posted at all the precincts in case somebody comes up and they're not sure, am I at the right precinct? And I see Dr. Casey trying it. And I did I did try it myself because I'm like, I'm putting it on this, does it work? So it did work for me, so I hope it works for you, Dr. Casey. So so you can, a voter can scan this QR code, or our officers of election can direct them to scan this code and then direct them to their proper polling location. They are welcome to visit our site, and they can go to the political district map viewer. That will also guide them and direct them to their right polling place. They have to show up where they are registered to vote. Or they can always call our office, and we can definitely give them that information. We're working with communications and media to ensure voters know that if they wait to vote on Election Day, they must cast their ballot in the precinct where they are currently registered for the ballot to count. Every election, we have voters showing up at the registrar's office Election Day ready to cast their ballot. When we tell them they have to go to their precinct, quite often the voter is not very happy, saying, I always vote here. And while that may be the case, yes, you may have voted early here at the registrar's office. However, you've now waited till Election Day, and you must go to your precinct. So we're trying to definitely get that messaging out there. Will there be changes to our polling locations this year? There will be some changes tonight at the public hearing. I know will be discussed to move precinct 518 from Lifelong Learning Institute at Midlothian High School. And then I have some other proposed changes to be heard at the February public hearing to relocate, co-locate, and combine some of our precincts. We've looked at our current election day precincts and noticed an opportunity to clean up the locations. We can potentially combine 16 precincts into 8, since these locations will be wholly contained within their House, Congressional, and Senate district. Some locations must be moved for ADA compliance, some for better voter accessibility, whether it be parking or the walking distance inside the building to reach the voting location. If the proposed changes are approved, voters will receive new voter cards with a letter stating the update to their polling location. We would again work with communications and media to get the information to the public, as well as meet with the local party chairs to request their assistance in the communication effort. The GIS team will update the county's data and the affected maps on the county website, and we will post signs at the old locations with a map directing voters to the new location. So these changes will save cost on staffing, the ordering of ballots, especially because now that the General Assembly has required us to report results by precinct, this means that every precinct has to have its own ballot style in order to make that happen. So if we condense the 16 into 8, it would be less ballots that we will order. Of course, voting equipment we would save, and miscellaneous election supplies. It will also save on staff resources to prepare these precincts for each election and streamline delivery of cages and equipment to polling locations. That concludes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from anyone? Anyone?
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For just a quick question, moving it from 2 weeks to 1 week on early voting, you said the board decided. I was wondering if you could clarify which board that was?
Yes, sir. The electoral board voted. So the governing body establishes the satellites, and the electoral board establishes the times. So the electoral board met, I want to say, in the January meeting, and decided to decrease the 2 weeks to 1 week. Now that is just for the March election. They will meet again to vote on the others. I would imagine they would take it back to the 2 weeks for the June and the November, definitely the November presidential.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As a former officer of election, I can greatly appreciate the amount of work it takes to do those things, and it's I've convinced several of my neighbors to go and apply in one of
Wonderful.
to fill in where I will not be anymore. But I just think it's a great way of meeting people in your community, getting to know the process better. And I will say that I think that the conglomeration of the redistricting as well as adding the 45 days probably confused more people than anything, because we had people coming in and they had been to 3 different places by the time they got to us and said, they just sent me here. This is because people were voting early and then they were going at the actual and then showing up. And so, yes, they were not very happy. So I think I appreciate that. Thank you so much for all you do.
You're very welcome.
I just had a question for you. Sure. With 170-something days of early voting, have you found any voter fatigue in the community?
I have found that it's voter fatigue because it's essentially voting, constant voting, right? So voter fatigue, candidate fatigue, especially this last campaign, right? 45 days, and you guys were out there. It's exhausting, yes. I find it, our elderly community especially gets a little confused if they vote on day 45. Like in September, they will cast their vote in September, cast it early, usually absentee, and then they would come in closer to November and say, I'm ready to vote. And we're like, no, you already voted. And there's much confusion because we have to then provide them with proof that they've already voted and sort of kind of explain that, yeah, you cast. So it is confusing, but And fatigue, yeah. 45 days, it's tiring for everybody involved.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vera, for being here. And we
Welcome.
continue
Thank
to
you.
look forward to any recommendations we can do to improve the process, as well as communicating with those voters who do vote. So thank you very, very much for that, for your being here. And again, we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.